Hi, welcome. And I see we have a couple people just kind of coming in from the waiting room. So feel free to unmute yourself and say hi, because I don't think we have a real large group today. So if you are comfortable doing that, go ahead and do it. You don't have to.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Well, welcome to our webinar this afternoon. If it's afternoon where you are, I'm not sure where everyone's located. We're going to go ahead and get started and do introductions. We had just a few of us here today, so April and myself, and then the two of you so far. So hopefully more will join us as we go along. We're recording this, but this is going to be kind of laid back. We've done this webinar quite a few years in a row, so we're happy to have you. If you have questions, please feel free to just unmute, ask the question. It's casual, it's laid back. You can use the chat box, whatever you like. And we are also recording this, so if you want to go back and watch it, or you want to share it with a colleague, we'll have it up on the website. We'll share the link out, that sort of thing. So not to worry. So just bear with April and I as we go through this. I am going to actually just switch to the slide where we introduce ourselves before I start talking too much. So let me do that. So April, I'll let you go first.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And I honestly, with just the four of us here, I think that you should be, able to introduce yourselves too. But I am Dr. April Barnes. Feel free to call me April. I get the opportunity or have the opportunity to serve as the executive director of University Housing at the University of South Carolina. And have the pleasure of being the program committee's admin this year. So ACE program admin, which means I get to help with kind of all things administrative in regards to the programming committee for ACUHO-I. So program proposals are part of that.
Yep, thanks, April. And I'm Lori Sabata. I am with ACUHO-I Central Office staff. I am the professional staff leader for the conference committee, the programming conference committee for the ACUHO-I Conference and Expo for 2022. And actually, I've been doing this since I came here in 2010. So I don't know, it's like 11-ish years or 12 or something like that. I'm not sure. Long time. So we are just going to go through some information here. I'm going to switch back really quick to my other slide because I had a couple notes I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget. But before we do that, April, you said we should all do introductions since there's just the four of us. So are we okay with doing that? Are we comfortable?
Sure. I'm John Waynick, Senior Architect at Hollis & Miller Architects.
Fantastic.
And I am Daniel Cooper, and I'm with Hollis & Miller Architects as well, and I'm also a Senior Architect.
Awesome.
Okay. Good.
It's funny because I was just saying to April yesterday that it always is mostly our corporate friends that show up on how to submit your best proposal webinar. And see, I'm right. It seems like our corporate friends are always motivated to want to do their best proposals and get those accepted. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I wanted to mention that if you didn't know already, the call for proposals has opened. It opened on October 25th. So I think it's been open for what, 2 weeks or something like that already. So it is open. We're going to share some links later too. And then we're actually going to go over the whole process too, in case you're not familiar with that. So we'll get to that. We're going to go over some milestones. We're going to go through some dates, share some links. But first, before I get into that, I want to make sure I set the stage of welcoming everyone, not only to this webinar, but super excited to welcome everyone back to being in person in Pittsburgh. So as I'm sure everyone knows, it's been about 2-3 years, I think, since we've been in person for this conference. And so we're excited to kind of come out of the gate and be in person again in Pittsburgh. And we do have also a virtual conference that's sort of in the planning phase. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute as we kind of get through our agenda here. So all right, I'm going to just roll on here past this slide onto the next one. And April, I'm going to give you this one.
Yes, thank you so much. As Lori said, our program proposals, it has been open. The call for programs has been open. We are hoping to get our proposals in. They are due by December 3rd, which is a Friday. And then hoping to get presenters notified in early February. And then of course our conference dates again are June 13th through the 16th. That should give you plenty of time to create your programs and get everything ready to go for that. Again, that virtual program is TBD later in June, but again, registration is currently open. So we invite everyone to turn in those proposals.
Yep, and I just I pasted a few. I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone in the waiting room here. Nope, I think I got us for now. Sorry, Stephanie, if you were waiting there for a minute, I just let you in. Yeah, so I just pasted in chat. I pasted in the call for programs link. That's the submission form, and then I also pasted the registration link because that is always also open. I wanted to make a note before I forget as anyone, we can do like either a raise of hands or like, you know, whenever we want. Have you been to the conference before, either the virtual or the live?
No.
Have not been.
Awesome.
So a couple first times. Okay. Well, I'm making this note for those of us who have, you know, traditionally gone to the conference for many, many years in a row, like myself. As long as I've been going to the conference, it has always been 4 days and it's gone from Sunday to Tuesday. And so if you're used to that, I'm just dropping a note here to let everyone know that it's actually now Monday to Thursday. So for those of you who are new, won't notice, won't care. For those of us who have done this for 12 years or so, we're like, oh my gosh, how do I even think about that? So just wanted to make a note in case you are not a first-time conference attendee. It's going to feel, you know, really different. So, all right, so let's see, we went through the milestones and the dates. Wanted to give an overview of what we are going to talk about today. In a few minutes, I'm going to turn it over to, well, when I get done with this slide, I'm going to turn it over to April, and April is going to go through some delegate profile information from the virtual ACE that we had just a couple months ago, which is hard to believe, in June, where we had over 3,000 attendees, which is the most that I can remember us ever having for the conference. Again, it was virtual, not in person, so I know that that's different, and I know that that also sort of produces a different sort of demographic profile than we traditionally might have in person, but still interesting to look at nonetheless, because I think it's useful to look at and think about who's in the room or who could potentially be in the room when you're preparing your proposal. And we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to go through content, we're going to go through target audiences. So what are the target audiences that we're trying to create proposals for? I'm going to go through a whole bunch of detail on the actual submission process. So it looks like we have a pretty good group that hasn't done this before. So I'm actually going to pull up the website, show you how to get to the proposal form. I'm going to walk through the form, show you what it all means, because we have a couple new fields on there. And then, you know, again, anytime that'll be a good opportunity to ask questions, we're happy to answer those.
Hey, Lori, I did have a
Yeah.
question though. So you said it was digital last year and it's going to be in person this year. Is it going to be a sort of a hybrid situation where you have both, or is it all going to be in person?
It's going to be, there's going to be sort of dual. So I don't know if hybrid is exactly the main focus on it is the in-person. This call for proposals, and I just want to make sure I state that too, is for the in-person. You'll see when we go and we look at the form later, we have a couple questions in there that sort of ask people's interest in being a virtual presenter for that other little piece that I talked about. That's going to be, I think the week after that in June, that's going to be sort of a virtual sort of companion to this conference. So I know it's a little bit confusing. So it's not exactly a hybrid, like it's happening and we're streaming at the same time or anything like that. It's just, it's actually kind of like two separate events. Does that answer your question or confuse you horribly?
No,
So
that's good.
It's a great question though, because we were trying to kind of figure out what that language should be. So
right. Yeah, and even sometimes we confuse ourselves when we start talking about it. So I think I have it straight though.
No, that makes sense. Thank you. I think how we think about it's probably a little different if you're doing both versus one or the other. So yeah, thank you.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yep. And so hopefully that answer helped. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too when we get to that part of the form where we ask that question, like what that means. Yeah. Okay. So so I'm going to do that demo, submitting a proposal, and then we're going to talking about different program types, and we're also going to as part of that, I'm going to show an example of a program from a couple years ago that we thought that got really good ratings by our reviewers. We're going to talk a little bit about the reviewing process too, and why it scored well and did as well as it did. So we'll go through that too. All right, so I'm blabbing too much probably. Let's go to the next slide. Oh yes, April, I was going to turn it over to you to talk through. I think we have about 4 slides of just demographic information.
Demographic information. And again, really wanted to give you all some context in order to kind of set the stage for putting in a program proposal and who you might be looking for. Sorry, I am admitting someone from the room as well, from the waiting room. Okay, so we wanted to kind of give you an overview of why we do this program and different things like that. How many proposals are accepted versus submitted? Just to kind of give you kind of an overview of people are putting these in and what does that look like. You can see kind of a little bit of an ebb and flow. Last year, of course, an anomaly with it being virtual, a lot more attendants were there, so participants were there, and so I think we got a lot more program proposals, and so kind of that submission or that acceptance rate was a little bit lower, but you can see that we're typically right around that 50%, a little under, sometimes a little bit over, of how many programs are accepted from how many are submitted. So that is that. Going back, the registration data, again, wanting to kind of give you a target to aim for as you were putting in your program proposals. And when you look at this, most of our participants are at that master's degree level. And so they have a master's degree or above. We have some doctoral candidates. And of course, our 4-year degree. So people coming right out of college to ACUHO-I, to ACE, and then it kind of goes back down through some college, some associate's degrees, high school, and then less than that. We do have some different kind of occupations, and we'll go through that a little bit as well. But again, when you are creating some of these programs, this is a pretty educated field. Housing professionals tend to have kind of that master's level as an entry point into the field, and then kind of go beyond that. So also, just so that you know, membership type, a lot of our, we have a lot of our participants are coming from institutions. And so as you look at that, we have about 240 corporate sponsors who come, or corporate members who come which we love to have them here. But when you look at the registration numbers, 2,434 are coming from institutions. And so we have a strong following. And again, housing professionals who are coming to ACE to learn more about the profession and to get better at what we do. Again, kind of looking at that just so that you all know, we also track registration by region. You can kind of see to the left on this chart the different regions. CUHO, the best region, the region that I am in, not really. They are all fantastic, and I actually have worked in a couple of different regions, but the southeastern region of the United States is tracking ahead. UMR ACUHO is kind of in the middle, and then you can kind of go down and see our different regions and whatnot. We do have an I at the end, and so some of these are international, and so that has been an increase. And a couple of years ago, the last time I think we were together was in Toronto, in Canada, and so we really did do the international piece well there. when you look at this next one, I think that this is pretty an awesome graph, because I think that tells you who you are, really what our target population is here. And so we are definitely kind of catering to some of the upper or mid to upper level kind of professional here. And so when you look at this, the most attended kind of position that we have are our directors or our managers. And so they're looking here to get professionally developed, to learn more about what's out there, and to really help their departments get better. We do have some resident directors, hall directors who aren't in attendance. Those are kind of some of our entry-level professionals. And so when you're putting in program proposals, remembering that we have just a very wide gamut. So students all the way up through our senior executives, our senior housing officers, those types of people. And so there's really a wide range, but we're really kind of targeting that mid to upper level participants. You can see that we have faculty members here, vendors here, and consultants, even some grads and administrative staff. And so it's very wide, like we have a wide range. But again, as you tailor your program proposal, keeping in mind kind of what your target population is and who you are wanting to help with these, I think is really important. And then of course, our emerging trends. So one of the really cool things that ACUHO-I does is really talks to people and tries to find out what people want to know. So as you are coming to ACUHO-I, what are you looking for? What questions do you have? What are you trying to learn more about? And so they talk to and survey ACUHO-I memberships or members, their leaders, and really try to identify key topic areas that they are trying to address. And this is what has come in for trends for 2022. And so human resources is a huge piece that as a student affairs field, like as across the nation, which housing kind of fits into, how do we create sustainability within our careers? And so staffing, potential positional sustainability, supervision, advancement, level specific issues. So what are the differences between entry and mid and senior level? And so looking at those and is anybody doing things creatively? Is anyone doing it well? What are the things that people are seeing across the nation to really kind of educate people? Also with education, diversity, equity, and inclusion, how are we advocating? How are we educating? The allyship, it's been a really tough year. And so how are we responding? And as we come out of 2020 into 2021 and then beyond, how are we continuing that conversation? Occupancy management, again, a lot of housing professionals are auxiliaries. And so what does that look like? And how are we managing that, especially coming off of COVID, knowing that occupancy drives our revenue, and how are we responding to that? Of course, leadership and engagement, student outreach, interaction, advising, community building, the future housing of residents' life, of housing and residents' life, and again, how are we recovering, and how are we planning strategically in that? So all very key, all programs that we are looking for as we come out of 2021 and we are into June of 2022.
Okay, thanks, April. Thanks for going through those key topics. And we also have, these are other topics identified. And you'll see when we go through the form, there's going to be a big, long listing of, I shouldn't say big, long, it's not that long. There will be a listing of topics, and you'll recognize some of these, not only from the previous slide, but also this slide too, as you're going through and you're you're building your proposal, you're deciding which ones to choose. Some roll up under others. You'll see what I mean when we go through it. But the other topics we have as identified, some of these are similar to last year, would be current issues. So things that are going on locally, in your region, nationally, even globally, business operations, facilities management issues, topics under fiscal responsibility, and of course, corporate and affiliate partnerships are always of interest in program proposals, and anything under residential education. So curricular education, living learning communities for sure, are all topics that we're interested in. And there's also on the form, there's an other, so you can create your own topics. So you're not restricted to these. These are just, we're trying to give you an idea of sort of where to, if you're looking for ideas, some people already go into the proposal and like, I have this idea, this is what I want to do, I'm going to fit it under one of these, that's fine. But if you're looking for ideas I want to submit, this is a great place to start. All right. All right, so I kind of wanted to quickly, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the core curriculum, but it is a body of knowledge that was established in 2012. The core competencies sort of define the scope of the different, 12 different areas that are, of expertise that are unique to housing and residence life. It's on the screen. You don't want me to read it to you, but there are several areas that are not unique to housing, but equally important to our work. And these are our core content areas. And you'll be able to choose from, so you'll be able to not only select a topic area, but you'll be able to apply a core competency to it as well when you submit your proposal. And you can either choose one or you can choose 3 if you want to, because I know sometimes things overlap. So I just wanted to mention this really quickly and not spend tons of time. There's actually a link. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to grab that link right now and put it in chat. If you want to know more about the core competencies, you can read about those at this link that I'm going to put into chat. But I just wanted to mention them since it is something that you'll be seeing when you submit your proposal. And I think one of the fields is you have to choose at least one core competency to apply, and then the other 2 are optional. So this just kind of lists them out. And these are the ones that you will see. These are the top categories and subcategories underneath them. So really it's just the main categories that you'll see on the form. So those are the ACUHO-I core content areas. Are there any questions on that? I think I went through that kind of fast. No, okay. All right, I am going to let April talk a little bit about target audience.
Absolutely. And so we kind of mentioned this a little bit, but we really do have a lot of different, a widespread of participants who come to ACE. And so as you are filling out your program proposal, you're also going to have the opportunity to kind of talk about or select your target audience. Sometimes I have an age gap between a couple of my children. And so I always think about it of, hey, I might tell my 15-year-old something in a very different way that I would tell my 5-year-old. And so when you look at that, who are you trying to present to? And so if you look at these different pieces, we really do have a lot of educational experiences that are available that target specific stages. NHTI is our new professionals. We have our SHO Institute, which is for our senior level, different things like that. But again, we all kind of come together for ACE. And so when you are looking at this, are you targeting the senior leadership? Are you targeting mid-managers, new professionals? And so it's really important that you consider kind of your target audience as you're starting to build that program proposal and your presentation, and that you're accurately kind of selecting content that would fit that that level. And so supervising students would probably be, for like, if you're talking about that, our entry-level professionals who do supervise students. Our SHOs or our senior level housing officers might not attend that as they are supervising directors and mid-managers. And so thinking about what that looks like and how you can kind of build that I think that that really helps our participants know what to expect when they kind of enter that room. And which is really kind of important of we're giving them an accurate portrayal of what's going to happen. So any questions on that?
Makes sense.
All right, thanks, April. I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about the submission and review process. So I mentioned earlier, or we mentioned earlier, that there is there's a pretty very robust review process that these programs go through. We looked at that slide that April had put up that showed how many proposals are accepted versus how many are submitted. As you can see, it's not, you know, in some years a really high number. We're actually very selective about the programs that we accept, and it is definitely not an arbitrary process. All of the programs actually go through 2 rounds of very thorough, robust review. So round 1 is the first review that all of the programs go through, and there is a scoring criteria that is applied. And don't worry, I know this slide is small and kind of hard to read, but all of this is, I'm going to show you in a little bit when I share our website. This is all available on our website too. So if you want to go back and say, okay, let me look at this criteria and think about, how this program is going to be evaluated, you'll be able to go back and look at this. So I'll show you where that is. But I just want to put up here, for example, to show that this is the criteria that the programs go through in the first round. It then moves on to a second round where there are review coordinators who actually aggregate all of the scoring data. So it's all, we have really intense spreadsheets. I mean, it's a whole thing that happens. Yes, and April knows because you've been.
It takes a while.
Yeah, it does. Before we actually arrive to where we have a slate of programs, we say, well, this is the 25% or the 30 or 40 that we're going to accept for the conference. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that and make sure everyone was aware of that we do have a lot of process behind this. It's a lot of fun, really. We enjoy it.
It really is, and honestly, the more information that you can give us to understand what you're trying to do, understand the message and what your program is going to look like and what those outcomes are, the better. Because we're really truly kind of, we get the program, all we get to see is what you turn in, and from that we have to, score accordingly, put it into a category, and make sure that we kind of understand what's going to happen in the room. And so the more information, the better.
Yes. All right, so I mentioned we were going to go ahead and look at a program of yours that we really liked. And this is a program for a couple of years ago, and I wanted to just go over a couple points on it. This program, so here we have the title and the abstract. So you'll be submitting a 70-character title, and I think the abstract is 250, that includes spaces. So this was a really good example of a good succinct title that is engaging and tells what it's about, even just by reading the title. And the same with the abstract, says exactly, kind of as April mentioned, like exactly what the program is about. Not that you would write an abstract that didn't say what the program was about, but sometimes you'd be surprised. You can read an abstract and wonder, I just don't understand what's happening here. So this is just an example of a good title and abstract. If I'm going too fast, let me know. I was going to go ahead and move on. These are the learning objectives that were submitted also, and these are also required fields. These learning objectives don't have to be, perfect, 3-point or 5-point learning objectives. I mean, no one's going to be in there saying, oh, this is the wrong adjective for, I mean, no, we just want to make sure that when we look at the program in whole, that all of the activities that you're doing, from the title, the description, to everything that's the outline, is supporting what your learning objectives are. So it shows you've really thought it through from top to bottom, like everything I'm doing is supporting these outcomes.
Well, and that you have something that you want our participants to leave with. So as they're leaving the program, what are the tangibles that they are taking away?
Yep, for sure. Okay, this is really tiny and I don't expect you to be able to read this, but my point here is that the outline, it's a thing. And this I talk more about this almost than anything else because so many times when we're in that, I talked about that round 2 process. There's actually really a round 3 process because we actually end up all getting together and going through a final review of that's really the round 3 process. And when we're all in that room and we're looking at the programs, and maybe we have a couple programs that are a lot alike, we always go back to the outline to look at that and say, how is this one different than the other one? And it's always it's in the details. It's about this shows how things are actually going to be executed. So there's that. I think it sometimes answers a lot of questions too when someone we're reviewing and say, why don't we accept this program? And someone will say, well, I couldn't quite picture how it was going to all come together. How you're really going to do this in 50 minutes rather. How is it really going to happen? I couldn't picture it. And the outline is that key piece that I think really helps people be able to visualize that. And again, as I said before, also offers a distinction between one or two or maybe many programs that may be very similar in nature. So I don't know, April, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that this is where it really does kind of come together, and where the more is better, like of, hey, this is where we're starting, and these are the activities we're doing, and this is going to be how we're going to engage our participants, and all the way kind of through what this really looks like. And it's your opportunity to do that. I can tell you that when program proposals come in and there's not a really robust outline, it makes it really difficult to understand what the program is going to be, and the rubrics reflect that. And so I think that Lori's exactly spot on, that this is part of the make or break part of the program submittal.
Yep. And anytime you can put in, even if you break it down by times, like I'm going to spend the first 5 minutes doing this, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes doing this. That helps to answer the question of like, are you really going to be able to do this, or is this enough? Should this be a quick take? That sort of thing. So we talk about all of these things.
Yeah.
So
well, and I appreciate that piece too, because I think hopefully we're setting up the program proposal that you can think through your program as well. So these are some of the questions that you should be answering of, oh, hey, do I have enough time? Do I have to narrow my focus a bit? Or are there other pieces that I need to bring in to make this an hour-long or 50-minute program?
Yep. All right. So just a couple points that some of these we already talked about, but this is just rationale for why did we choose these particular examples. As I mentioned, the topic is relevant, unique, and identifying a topic that's needed. So going back to, the word needed kind of goes back to those couple slides that April and I talked about here's the topic areas that have been identified that we know we need programs on. The title is descriptive. Obviously what it's going to be about. You can read the title even without almost reading the abstract and know pretty much what it's going to be about. Not campus specific. What do we mean by that? We mean if it's a program proposal that is really specific to something that can be applied only to that campus,
right.
Sometimes
it's non-transferable, like you can't
yes,
necessarily use it universally.
exactly. We want the audience to be able to relate to that and be able to take away what they learned from that session and hopefully be able to apply it on their campus. So I think that's what we mean by that. So it doesn't mean that just because you talk about, I did this on my campus, that it'll be, oh, that's rejected, because that's not what we mean.
No, we want tangible examples, but can it be transferred, or is it very specific to your, and Lori just said it, is hey, we want participants to be able to go to a session and say, oh, that was really cool. How can I implement it? I did a program proposal that was accepted, and I presented a few years ago on fraternity and sorority life housing, and kind of went through what we did on our campus, but that can be applied to other campuses.
Right. And then the outline, we talked a lot about the outline. So I think probably said enough there, but again, giving a good idea what will actually happen and supporting the learning objectives, and just generally meets all the defined criteria, is well thought out and thorough.
Yeah. I wanted to talk real quickly on, we do sometimes get the program proposals that are really similar. So what is kind of unique about your experience? What's your take on it? For example, I did ancillary partnerships, P3s, business, the business bucket at one point in time through my involvement with the ACUHO-I programming committee. And we had, I think 3 or 4, maybe even 5 P3 submissions of, oh, hey, this is kind of our P3 experience. But what makes that unique? Like what is unique to your part of that, and how can that be again translated into something that could be universal? And so we had to pick. You can't have just 5 of those. You have to kind of narrow it down. So what makes yours kind of unique, and what is your take on that? Like, what's kind of your spin, I guess, is a better way to put it. And that is not a bad thing to include.
Definitely. All right, so demo time. So let me switch some screens around here, and I'm going to drag over the ACUHO-I website. So April, are you seeing the website? Okay, good. I did it right.
I was going to say, you're doing fantastic driving.
I hope so. I've tech hosted enough sessions, hopefully, which, you know, sometimes you never know. Okay, so what I wanted to do here was, now I know that I gave a link earlier that I put in the chat that was a link that takes you directly to the submission form, but I wanted to go through a couple steps leading up to that first, in case anyone is like, I don't know, I don't have the link. Where do I find it? From the main ACUHO-I website, you go to educational events, you go to the conference and expo, and it brings you to the main page that gives you information that tells you about registering, learning more, that sort of thing. There's a link over here on the left-hand side for a call for programs. If you click on that, that will bring to a page. And I remember I mentioned earlier, I said it won't be the last time that you see some of this detailed information. We try to kind of put it all in the same place on this page so that you can go back to it and refer to it. And actually, I think I will take this and put this in the chat as well. So this has a lot of information on it, a lot of what we've covered already here today, but I just wanted to show it to you. So on the top here, you know, just is sort of an intro. It makes a little bit of a reference to this virtual program that I talked about. I mean, you may have seen this come out in email form too, encouraging you to submit a call for programs, which could be why you're here, because I think we put a link to this webinar in there as well. And then there's a little box over here. Here's the direct link that'll take you right to the proposal submission form. It gives you a couple dates that we talked about, or that April talked about earlier, just those high level sort of milestone dates, like when things are going to happen, when things are due, that sort of thing. Another link to the form in case you missed the first one. There's something here called a proposal assistance guide. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that up. It opens up in a new tab. And this is actually like a sort of a version of the form. So what I would do is I would, you know, I would probably open this up and print it out ahead of time and read it, because it's kind of nice, because, you know, when you get to the form, you know, you start typing in the form and it's kind of hard to compose in the form. And then it asks you for information that, oh, I didn't think about learning objectives and I have to go, you know, this tells you what you need ahead of time, so that, I guess my point is, like, by the time you get to the form, like, you already know what you need to put in there. Maybe what I would suggest is having it in a Word document and then just pasting it into the form, because you know how forms do you wrong sometimes and crash in the middle and then you lose all of your work. So I would definitely, you know, get this form. I'm going to put this in the chat too. Hold on here. This is a handy little form. And it's going to walk you through exactly what you need to do. And we're going to go through the form as well, but I just wanted to bring this to your attention. There's a link to it from this page. This talks about the audience that April talked about. It talks about the different session types. So you can choose an interest session. They're all 50 minutes except for the quick takes. And then we are looking for some extended sessions. So if you wanted to do something really in depth, like say you wanted to do like, you know, a two-parter. So you did maybe the first part one is like all discussion and more lecture type things. And then maybe part two is sort of an add-on to that, where we do something experiential, or we do like a World Cafe, or, you know, we're going to do some sort of active and peer-to-peer engagement or something like that. So there's extended sessions. It talks about those topic areas. Also, again, you could go here. So that slide isn't the last time you'll be able to look at that. Talks about the core competencies, which I covered. And then there are some sort of FAQs. There's some tips and tricks here. I'm not going to read through them all. I'll let you do that. But obviously, it's the first one here. Don't skip on the outline. We're big on the outline. And lots of other things in here. Talks about how to submit. Again, gives you the link. What happens after you submit the proposal. So it sort of says, you know, after I submit, it goes away, I don't hear about it, or, you know, what happens after that. So it gives you a little bit of information there. Here's that scoring criteria. That slide I popped up earlier is on here. Talks about, will you be required to register? Yes, to present, you will be required to register for the conference. And then just other potential topics at the bottom. And these are sort of long-standing things that are sort of pillars that we're always sort of looking for. But again, as we showed up here, there are those really those sort of high-level topics that we're really actively looking for this call for programs. So that's a lot of information on this page. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to go ahead. If there are no questions, I went through that kind of fast. Okay, good.
Lori, there is one question in the chat.
Yep.
Sorry, there is one question in the chat, which I think you can get to on when you go into the proposal, but is it possible to select multiple audiences? So SHO, mid-managers, entry level, that sort of piece.
No, it's only one on the audiences. Yep. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to flip over to the form. It's telling us to sit tight while that opens up, and I'm just going to walk through it really quickly. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. I know it's kind of small. I don't know if you can read that or not, but I'll try to sort of call it out. So the title, obviously, that's where you start, 70 characters or less, including spaces. The description, I said 250, it's 500 characters. Thank goodness, 500 characters or less, also including spaces. Presenters here, you're going to use this search bar. I recommend using the search bar rather than typing names in here, because it's best to use the record that the person already has in the database, because it has their, hopefully their correct email in it, correct name, spelling, that sort of thing. So you would want to put in you know, your presenter's name here. You know, there will be a lookup, it will find the name and it will pop it in. So it's really best to use the search function to find your presenters in here, and you can have 5 total. If you need more, you know, you can always email us, and, you know, we've had more than 5 presenters before. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes in panels, you know, it happens. Learning objectives that we mentioned go here. These are all required fields. Again, they don't have to be perfect. And then we get to the outline section of the proposal, and they give you this nice little WYSIWYG here so that you can actually format it with bullets and, you know, numberings, and really put an outline from. You can use, you know, bold and all kinds of things to make it more of like an outline feel. That's not super important. Like, we don't look at the outlines and say, boy, this outline doesn't have bullets, you know. No, it's not about that. But if you feel that, you know, you want to use that to sort of, you know, display things a little bit more clearly, then you can use that you can do that using this editor. This is one of the questions on here that I wanted to stop and talk about. So I mentioned earlier that and someone had also asked a question about, you know, I said, well, we're going to have the live conference, and that's what this call for proposals is for. But we also have an online sort of companion component that we're planning for. And these questions are really aimed at helping us do that, helping us identify which content being submitted for this conference might also apply to our virtual, to our online And so they're meant to really ask you if you would be. So this says the 2022 conference will be a multimodal experience, meaning we have those two components, so that we allow it accommodates for folks who want to join us from different geographic locations and things like that. And so all the proposals are be considered for in person, but they're asking, would you also, do you have a preference? So as you're submitting, would you really like to be this considered for virtual? And so you can go ahead and check that box, and someone may be contacting you later saying, hey, are you interested in presenting this virtually? There's also another question down here, which isn't quite in order, but it says I'm willing to present my session in person and during virtual offering later in June, which means am I willing to do both? Yes or no. It's not a required field, so you don't have to answer it. But if you are willing, you can check that box. And so we would be contacting you to discuss that further. That's all those are about. Are there any questions about that? Let me check the chat box.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. All right, I skipped around there a little bit. Sorry about that, but those things were sort of related, and I wanted to cover it because it's important. This is the primary target audience. April went over that slide earlier, so you're able to choose one, but you can only choose one from here. We ask about the number of years you have in the field. So you use the drop down. Actually, it looks like a drop up in this. And then session type, and we looked at those on the website. These are all the different types of sessions that you can submit. So you've got your inter-session roundtables. We should talk about roundtables for a second, because roundtables are a little different. They are 50 minutes, but they're like, and we are going to be in person again. So this is the setting we have to think about. It's meant to be a discussion, a conversation. There's no AV, there's no PowerPoint, there's nothing in the room. Usually there's just like a circle of chairs, and it's really meant to be a discussion. So those are a bit different. April, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yep, no, sometimes it can be, I've been to roundtables that are everyone together. I've been to roundtables that have like 5 different topics, and kind of each table discusses a topic, and then you can switch, you can discuss as a whole group. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but it really truly focuses around some sort of question or idea, and then folks sitting around and discussing it.
Absolutely. Yep. So we have panel presentations, quick takes, and then the extended sessions that I talked about just a little while ago. So you select that. These are the topic areas that we talked about. So you would choose one of those. And again, there is an other category as well. So you can also fill that in. And core competencies. So it's going to make you apply at least one. These others are optionals. And I guess the reason we do that is because there is a lot of crossover. And sometimes when we're evaluating them, we look at these programs in all different sort of cross sections. And sometimes we look at the core competencies, and we want to make sure that we have a good distribution of programs, that it doesn't necessarily be even, but it needs to be representative of the core competencies. And so you may have one, we look at one that was like, this could be human resources, or it could be student development, or, so sometimes if you choose a couple of these, it sort of helps us determine that a little bit. I don't know, April, if there's any other.
No, I think that you hit that really well. Again, sometimes we kind of, we need to make sure that there's kind of a good spread. And so we might pull from over here or over here. And so making sure that you are, again, telling us the most you can about what you're representing and what you're doing within your program, and what competencies you are trying to hit.
Right. Okay. And then I think the last question on here is, can this program be applied directly to organizations based outside your country? So we're just looking to see if there is a global aspect. We're always looking for more programs for our global friends. And so we sort of look to this to see if there are any that might appeal to that audience a little bit more. So, so that's helpful as well. So that's the last question on the form before it asks you to either save your draft, or if you hit the next button, it just takes you another page that sort of has you you'll review what you submitted and then you'll submit it. So you don't want to forget to do that, because I have an awful lot of people who save drafts and then forget to submit, and I'll email you if you do that. But you know, it's always better if you go back to your draft and actually submit it. So you can either save a draft, you can submit. I'm not going to do it here, and then you'll get a confirmation email after that that will confirm, yes, we've received your program proposal. And that's the end of that portion anyway of the process. So that's kind of a lot. We're coming up on 2:50 here, so I have a couple more things to cover and I will leave time for questions. So I'm going to go back to this. I think some of these things are things that I've talked about. Yeah, I talked about that already. So I don't think we need to go over that again. This was that's those two questions that I talked about. They were asking like, what's your preferred format, virtual or in person? And then would you be willing to present at both? So that's what that's about.
Yeah.
Tips and tricks. So again, making sure your presentation is unique. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be like something brand new or unique, but it just, you know, it helps if there's something like, boy, we haven't seen this before, something that really stands out. Showing how you would include active participation, because we're always looking for a little bit more engagement, peer-to-peer. Well-developed outline, we talked about that. I think we get that. Providing multiple perspectives from different campuses. So I think we touched on that a little bit when I think what this kind of means is, you know, something that's applicable that you could apply to your campus. And providing data and outcomes that support your program is always a good thing, and timely issues and best practices.
Yeah. I think some of the successful program proposals that I have seen definitely have an aspect of active participation, and hey, how are you going to create some engagement? Are you going to ask people to think about something? Are you going to have them go to their neighbor and share what's happening on their campus so that people can kind of compare? But again, what are the takeaways? Like, what are you trying to what are participants going to leave with, and not necessarily like a little cool giveaway, but what are the ideas that they can take back and implement on their campuses? Also, multiple perspective from different campuses can also be, hey, if we are talking about sustainability and I do something really cool, but I know at my friend from another institution has something really cool that they do too. If we present together and can show two different perspectives on it, that's double the takeaways that I can have. And so if you are looking for, you can always ask someone to co-present with you, I think is something that is really kind of unique and cool. Some of the best presentations I've been to have included multiple presenters who are talking about kind of the same thing. And so, oh, hey, I went to a really cool presentation on a book on leadership, and they had like 3 or 4 different people who gave their perspectives and what they did on their campuses with it. And that was really kind of cool. So anything, again, that shows those pieces of it, if you can somehow get that into the proposal and let us know what you're thinking and what you're doing, helps us kind of score, rescore, and then slate. So I think that's something that I would say. Sorry.
Yep, that's a really good point, April. Okay, questions. Let me open up the chat box and see if anything pops up here.
Or again, feel free to unmute yourself. There's not a whole lot of us, and so feel free to ask away, especially if we didn't hit on something.
You can also email us too. I'm going to put my email in the chat because you might think of something later.
Yeah.
You might think of something later as you're going through this that you want to email us about. And even after you've submitted your program, you may have questions like, you know, when will we hear? Or, I mean, I know we said early February, but, you know, you just may have other questions or want to know something. So feel free, by all means, to email either of us at any time. Happy to answer any of those questions.
And make sure that you're paying attention to the ACUHO-I website and emails and different things. We may extend a call for programs and we will update, but typically you will hear, even if we kind of have to adjust those timelines around that mid-February date.
Yep, that's a good point. All right, well, it looks like we can go ahead and conclude. And I just want to thank April. Thanks for co-hosting with me today. It's always super helpful to have your perspective on this as someone who's gone, been a reviewer, been a review coordinator, and also been to a lot of programs. Whereas I sort of sit in a different seat and sort of, wrangling all the data and making sure all the logistics and pieces parts happen. You really have the perspective. I think that's helpful for people. So I appreciate you, your perspective.
Absolutely. Oh, I did want to say one other thing about kind of your target audience and different things. Remember that there's a lot of pieces. When you look at university housing as a whole, you're like, oh, hey, residence halls and students in them. But there are so many different people who come who support different functional areas. And so even within my housing, so within my department, I have 7 different units. I have IT, I have business, I have facilities and operations, I have construction and renovation, I have assessment. And so all of my directors, I ask them to come to ACUHO-I, and so they're looking for things within their areas, but also how things relate kind of to that. And so there's a lot of diversity that comes. And so hitting something for something that people can relate to, I think is pretty cool. That we look for is, hey, what are some of the transferable knowledge points that can be kind of widespread in that? So not only just the different levels, but also the different functional areas.
Yes, that's a good point. All right, well, we're coming up on the hour. So yeah, I was able to keep it under the hour, keep to my commitment there. I know. So
I really did a great job.
and thank you also for joining us today. Really appreciate it when folks want to join and learn about how to submit a proposal. So so that's really great. So I appreciate you. Hope everyone has a great afternoon. We'll be posting the recording too. So if you want to watch it again, because it was so great, or you want to share it with colleagues, we'll put the link out there so you're able to do that.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to seeing your submittals.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.